5. Emergency boiler operation. The following circumstances may cause the steam failure. Equipment of the failure can frequently be corrected by proper action by the crew. Safety valve pops, low water in the boiler drum, stroker boiler interlocks, operates high water level of the boiler drum, no feed water in pressure, stroke stops, stroker runs wide open with no control, stroker jet control valve fail with the auxiliary reducing valve fails, grate stopped, ash jet stopped, uneven and cold distribution. The following corrective procedure may be tried. Safety valve pop. Switch or stroke of the valve with the AV 1012 with the hand to reduce the control pressure. Reduce the pressure control AC 1002. Just set the point at 10 psi gauge if necessary. Do the repeating popping after safety valve received. Switch the stroker valve, selector valve, automatic control. Low water in the boiler drum. If the water softener warning light is off, the proceed as follows. Push the emergency pump and start AB 1080 and switch the emergency pump cock AV 1007 on the AB 1008 after the pumping start running after the turn main feed pump cock off. If the pump does not start, push the AB 1102, the AB 1101. Fireman's councils release the AB 1102 but after the pump starts, but hold or block the AB 1101 until the end of the run. If the water softener light is on, proceed as follows. Reduce the speed if the warning light goes out and drum water level recovers. Continue the running at reduced speed. If the warning light remains on, stop the emergency to restore the water with the level to go to the rear of the locomotive. Open the valve W39 with the cold pump. Water from the valve does not clear with the bank of the boiler. Call the road assistance if the water is normal. Continue with the run. Use the emergency pump if it must be possible to get the full load with the emergency pump. Alright, your stroker boiler interlocks operates. Reduce the speed necessary to hold the boiler pressure with above 300 psi gallons. Follow the procedure outlined is followed if the boiler drum level is low. Restore the normal level of the outline. Proceeding with the section low water in the boiler drum. Then proceed as follows. Switch the stroker selector valve AV 1012 to the hand pressure low water reset button AB 1030 with until the 300 psi gallons on the gauge. Then release. Reset the pointer on the pressure control with the match boiler pressure for the switch stroker the selector valve automatic. No. If the boiler pressure is less than 300 psi gallons, fire with the selector valve on the handle until the boiler pressure is back to 300 psi gallons. Raise the boiler to full pressure, then release the resume normal operation. Alright, if the drum water level is normal but the power turbine oil temperature warning light is on, there is no draft. Proceed as follows. Stop the power turbine, set the throttle and off, switch the stack jet on, and switch the stroker and blower selector valve with the AV 1012, AV 1013 to hand and set blower control pressures to 0. Fire boiler at the hand of the stroker selector valve to maintain the steam pressure. Continue to the nearest service point on the stack jets at the speed of the hold the boiler steam pressure above 450 psi gallons. If the drum water level is normal but the power turbine oil pressure warning light is on, there is no draft. Proceed as follows. Stop the power turbine, switch the stack jet cock on, switch the stoker and the blower selector valves to hand and set the blower control pressure to the 0. Maintain the steam pressure for the firing with the stroker and selector valve on hand. Go to the power compartment. If the auxiliary oil pump is running, check the power turbine oil level. If it is low, the bank boiler and call the road assistance. If the auxiliary oil pump is not running, check the power turbine oil level is normal. Check the regulator SH635. If the regulator is open, check the steam valve SS645. SH645 is open. Bang the boiler and call the road assistance. If any of the above steps reestablish the oil pressure, start the boiler blower, and if the blower operates satisfactorily, reset the pressure control of the AC 1002. Pointer of 300 psi gallons. Raise the steam pressure with the stroker and the boiler selector valves on hand and switch them into the automatic control 300 psi gallons. Continue to raise the steam pressure 550 psi gallons. Reset the pointer on the pressure control in the steps not more than 325 psi gallons. Start the power turbine and the steam pressure reaches 450 psi gallons. High water level in the boiler drum. If it causes the immediately apparent switch of the feed water selector valve to the hand, reduce the control pressure and proceeds as follows. Reduce the drum water level by using emergency blowdown push button AB 1020. If the water level does not rise again, switch for the feed water selector valve to the AB 1006 to be activate the automatic. If the high water persists, continue with running with the feed water selector valve on hand If the high water still persists, so controlling the water level turning of the main feed pump cock AV1015 off, then on the found the necessary of the emergency blowdown may also be used in assist the control of the water level to report the nearest service point. There's probably a particle lodged in the seat of the feed water regulator valve. No feed water pressure. Reduce the speed and check with the drum water level the water to the heat pressure, heater level, the heater pressure, process or pump pressure, then proceed as follows. If there's no water heater pressure, start the emergency pump immediately, pushing AB1008, turning the cock AV1007 to the on, and releasing AB1008 after the pump starts. If the drum water level is high, the booster pump and the heater pressure are the same. The high water level interlocking may be in operation, reducing the drum level by using the emergency blowdown push button AB1020. If all the other conditions are normal except for the heater and booster pump pressure is the same, the booster pump feeds the pump interlocking may be in operation. Wait 30 seconds if the condition does not correct itself and start the emergency pump as described in step 1. And all other conditions are normal except for the heater level is low. The heater level of feed with the pump interlocking may be in operation. Wait 30 seconds if the condition does not correct itself. Start the emergency pump as described in step 1. Alright, stoker stop. Check the boiler and extreme steam procedures. Check the boiler auxiliary steam pressures and the stoker distribution table that can proceed as follows. If the boiler steam pressure is high and the control pressure from the stoker selector valve, the AV1012 with the below 10 psi gallons, wait for the steam pressure to fall. If there's no auxiliary steam pressure, take the following steps. Switch the stoker selector valve to the AV1012 with the handle with the second the controller pressure with the valve with an automatic control maintained just as prior to the upset. The crack the producing valve by bypassing the S629. Close stop valve S613, regulating the auxiliary steam pressure of the manually. So the S629, the valve is located behind the door in the boiler, the front panel above the water level controller AC1001. The switch stroker selector valve is an automatic as soon as convenient with the proceed with the run. If the stroker distributing table is plugged with a hole, this proceeds as follows. Increase the stroker jet pressure if the does not clear the table. Stop the power turbine and switch stroker then blower selector valve with the AV1012 with the AV1013 to hand and set the blower control pressure with the 0 with the stroker control pressure at 3 psi gallon. Turn the stack jet cool the AV1019 on and outdoor fire door. Open the indoor fire door S241. Remove the hood over the table. Poke the packeted coals loose and clear of the table with the jets. Start the stroker with the AV1012. Check the operation satisfactory. Replace the hood and close the inner fire door. Close the outer fire door. Start the boiler blower. Reset the pressure control to 300 psi gauge. Raise the steam pressure selector valve on the hand control to switch automatic control at 300 psi gallons. Raise the steam pressure at 500 psi gallons to raise the pressure control set point and start the power turbine at 450 psi gallons and continue the running. D. If all of the above conditions are normal, try the hand jack of the stroker control valve of the S203 with located at the floor level to the right side of the locker room. If the stroker starts, proceed as follows. Reduce the speed, switch the stroker selector valve AV1012 to the hand and set the control pressure to 0. Turn the stroker shut off cock valve AV1014 off. Open the stroker jet bypass valve S245. Switch the blower selector valve AV1013 to the hand. Regulate the blower when necessary by hand. Operate stroker manually. Use the stroker hand jack located in the locker room. Note that the hand jack operates just in the reverse of the usual valve turning the clockwise. Open the valve turning counterclockwise with the close of the valve. 7. Produce the nearest surface point at the produced speed. If none of the above situations apply, there is probably a foreign object jammed and the stroker proceeds as follows. Stop the power turbine, switch all of the selector valves AV1012, AV1013, AV1006 to hand. Shut the zero controller pressure to maintain the drum water level by hand control. Switch the stroker shut off control AV1014 off and open the jet control bypass S245. Move the cover plate over the stroker inspection box within the locker room, and then raise the coal gate into the bunker and look at the scrap metal, stone, and bricks, and etc. If there are no foreign objects found, then move the stroker reverse valve S249 to the backup position. Back up the stroker using the S203 hand jack provided with the locker room looking for foreign material. If no object is found, run the stroker back and forth looking for the foreign object. Boiler stream pressure will drop. If the boiler pressure falls to 150 psi gauge, call for rotor assistance. Know that sometimes the action running of the stroker back and forth will loosen the jam object and will pass it into the firebox without further Trouble. A foreign object that's found with the place of the bunker coal gate with a former height with a replaced injection inspection box cover. Turn the hand of the jack off. Put the reverse level in the normal position. Shut the stroker jet control bypass valve S245. Turn the stroker shut off valve AV1014 on. Then follow the procedure outlined in steps 9 under section C. Alright, stroker runs wide open with no control. Turn the stroker shut off cock to off the AV1014 and proceed to outline under section D of the stroker stop. Stroker jet control valve fails. Open the stroker jet bypass valve. Auxiliary reducing valve bypass. Open controller bypass valve and close the stop valve. Graded step. Check the grate drive, the air steam pressure, the grate drive, the stroker control pressure, then proceed as follows. If the stroke control pressure is less than 7 psi gauge, wait until the firing rate increases. The grate tube relator interlocking may be in operation. If the drive is not operating with both the ratchet latch and not picking with the up of the teeth of each of the stroke, turning on the grate control cock of the AV1074 on the boiler front with the left of the off to report the nearest service point. Note, the grate will easily hold the ash for 2 to 3 hours of operation with the full load open. The only difference is that the coal distribution is said to be better to prevent smoking. If there is no steam pressure by the grate drive, open the control with the bypass valve closed S244. If there is no control air pressure to the grate drive, check the air reporting reducing valve of AV1077 with the gauge report at the nearest service point. If none of the above situations apply, switch the grate control AV1074 to the right fast speed. If the drive responds, continue to the operating the grate at fast speed intermediately. If the grate is still stopped after all the above operations, report it to the nearest service point. Alright, Ash's jet stop. Check the position switch AE1018, the auxiliary steam pressure with the push, and AB1044, AB1061, and the jet operated with the push of the button used intermediately until the end of the running. Note the ash storage of the capacity in the front of the ash pan is sufficient for about 2 hours of full load longer. Necessary as the ashes will back up the grate in longer period without causing trouble. Increase the fuel air with the ratio of smoking encountered. Unevenly cold distribution of the grate. Previous provisions have been made to assist the fireman in overcoming the problem due to the extremely wet coal pileups on the grate. Held a blockage of the grate discharge. If extremely wet coal encountered with the break off the lumps available on the distribution table with the resultant power distribution and use of slurry jets which are operated with the same valve S248. If severe pileups of the coal with encountered with the grate, work forward with the switching in the grate control AV1074 with the faster increased stroke jet pressure with the fire over the pile while the pile is near the grate of discharge, breaking it up with the operating with the grate with the discharge below over the S207 S215. Some clinkers which might black on the grate with the discharge may also be broken up in the U with the grate discharge below over. The remainder will be usually ground with the smaller size action on the greater rubbing of the side of the bow pie. That's into the ash pan notes. 6. Preliminary locomotive inspection.